This is some pretty significant news, and sometimes good news gets lost in the constant parade of bad news. But the divorce rate in this country, it peaked in 1981, and since that year it has dropped around 24%. And a lot of people are saying that it's millennials. Millennials are staying married longer and staying married permanently. Let's talk to family law attorney Lene DeRudder on the WHO Newsmakers line. Lene, thanks for joining me today. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing great. So, Lene, what role are millennials playing in the plunging, I would call this plunging, divorce rate in this country?
Well, they're the catalyst for it. They're staying married longer, and even though you're seeing gray divorces go up, it's counterbalancing to where, and more so, and where it's affecting the overall divorce rate, and it's declining rapidly, which is despite being a divorce attorney is great news to me.
Right.
We don't really want people to get divorced. It's not good for our society. So the millennials are helping make that happen.
Now, you said earlier, I think, did you say gray divorces are still up? Are you talking about older people still getting divorced at a pretty regular clip?
Yeah, those are your baby boomers. So they're getting divorced. They're getting divorced more, but the millennials are staying married longer. And I think logically it makes complete sense because you've got children who are now married and having families that are products of divorce, of the high divorce rate that, 50% of, America's divorce, that thing that we always heard, and they were children that were the products of those divorces. So they went through it. Probably children are the biggest victims of divorces. I mean, that's the thing you want people to recognize when they're going through a divorce, parties going through a divorce, is that the persons that are really suffering are the children. And so you're seeing the consequence of that manifest now with millennials who have seen their parents go through really nasty, nasty divorces, particularly given that even the world of divorce is changing. And back then, it was more, I think, my perception is it was much more contentious, whereas now you do have a evolution of the divorce world, the family law world, trying to find alternative ways to resolve divorce without it getting so nasty. But because nobody wants to go through that. And so now you're seeing a manifestation of what happens when you're a victim of that ugly, ugly trauma.
Well, and it's very interesting, Lene. Then do you see that younger people are, because they went through this, are getting married later and living together longer with a potential partner because they really, 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 really want to get married and stay married?
You are. And it's funny, I love, there's an article that I quoted Helen Fisher from the Kinsey Institute describing millennials as fast sex, slow love. And I think that's a great description because they are slow to commit, and they are looking at the things that probably in their perception led to the divorce between their parents. One is probably, finances. It could be an imbalance of power. You typically had, one breadwinner, and it was usually the father, and the mother was the homemaker. And so I think you're seeing where they're saying, okay, I want to get my education, I want to get my career, I want to have my own financial independence. And those boxes get checked, and it's like, okay, now we're ready to look at commitment. But I also want to make sure that I like you and I want to spend my life with you. So let's date. And okay, this is looking good. So let's cohabitate and see if we can really intertwine our lives and make sure that works. Okay, now that works. Okay, now let's get married. So you're seeing, that's what you're kind of seeing. And so, yeah, they're getting married later in life.
So, Lene, you are a family law attorney. Is it finances that's still the thing that is driving relationships to break up? Is that the number one reason when you really start to talk to someone who comes to talk to you about getting divorced? Is that the thing you ultimately pin down as one of the bigger reasons that married couples split up?
That's a good question, and several people have asked me that. I think the best way to describe it is, instead of saying finances in the sense of not enough, too much, it's an imbalance of power. So I think what you're seeing a lot now, or what I see a lot come through my office, is where, they're long marriages. They've been married 15, 20, 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
And someone felt like someone sort of sacrificed and said, look, I'm going to be home and I'll take care of our children and I'll build our home life. And the other person said, okay, I'll go and I'll build my career. And the person who stayed home kind of felt like they weren't valued. Or even the person who was going in and building their career feels like they're not valued. And so you start seeing power struggles, and you see the feelings of disrespect or lack of appreciation. And so those are the things that people come through the door and say, I just can't do this anymore. I just can't do it. I've stayed home. My husband built his career for 20 years, 25 years. I helped him build, let's say he's a lawyer. I helped him build his practice, and he's now super accomplished, and he thinks it's his money, and he thinks he controls it, and he tells me what I can and can't do, and I'm sick of it. I gave up my career at, up in the corporate world, and I don't want this life anymore. And that's what we typically see. That's what usually. So it's not like, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It's really thought provoking. When you were saying power balance, I think what you're doing, Lene, is you're trying to define that, and that is very, very interesting. And it has. I would think that the younger generation, for lack of a better term, gets their financial ducks in a row, maybe more, before they get married.
Well, and another thing that I thought was really interesting that you're seeing on the millennials is they say that a lot of the women are driving it, which is not. If you think back, to marriage, traditional marriage, the face of marriage and what marriage looks like has evolved over the decades, and so particularly in the last 10 years, and so. That in itself is interesting, but also, like I'm a product of a very traditional home. My mom and dad just celebrated their 45th anniversary, and my mom stayed home, and my dad had the career. And I think, for millennials, they look at that, and a lot of the women are saying, I'm not going to rely on this person. I want to have my own independence. And so that's a shift in things as well.
That is family law attorney Lene DeRudder. And Lene, really thought-provoking comments today. Thanks very much for joining me on this topic.
Thank you for having me on.